Thank you. The way this session is structured is that I'm supposed to give a few remarks just to set the stage, and then Valerie, as though she hasn't had enough speaking time, will come in and tell us more about how we do adaptation to mainstream climate change issues. The session is then structured for me to ask Valerie some questions, which is great because it'll make it a little more iterative than it has been so far. So let me, is it okay if I stay here rather than go to the, okay. Now, a number of speakers, starting with the finance minister, and the finance minister always does this, Ali Chima, Sherry Rahman, a number of speakers pointed out the importance of getting the population issue right. That's within our control, and that will affect a lot of the outcomes down the road. So a lot of people have said that we should do something about it. We have allowed it to drift for too long. Now, there is good news there. There are experiments going on in public-private partnership to deliver family planning services at the door to lowest income households. So childbearing age women identified through BISP data are being incentivized to go to private clinics who happen to be very near where they live in order to overcome the social hesitation to visit family planning clinics. This was started in a Section 42 company, and I think many people sitting here understand what those are. These are essentially public companies, but with independent governance structures. They're independent boards. So one such company was set up by Mr. Shehbaz Sharif when he was Chief Minister of Punjab. I happened to be his economic advisor, and he said, "You've got to chair it. I knew nothing about family planning." But we had an excellent board, and we experimented with facilitating access to family planning services, and it really worked very well. World Bank has now picked it up and is going to scale it to all of Punjab. And I think there are lessons there to be learned for other provinces to do similar things in order to reduce the CPR rate, which is the contraceptive prevention, prevalent rate. So because several speakers raised this issue, I thought I would give some good news and the possibility that that issue can be addressed with sensible institutional and other support policies. Now, we've had a lot of discussion on finance. And we know that in the end, it comes down to what we call plumbing. In other words, we've got to fix a lot of things ourselves to make it attractive for not just the multilaterals, but also for private finance to come in. So I'm not going to talk about that. But to do the plumbing, we need a good map. We need a good roadmap. We need a good analytical basis to do the plumbing. So I'm going to ask Valerie to take her time to tell us about what kind of analytical work exists already that we can use in order to fix the plumbing issues so that we can make ourselves attractive for climate finance, whether it's multilateral or it's private, or indeed fix our own fiscal systems so that we can have more space for intervening in this extremely important issue. I have a presentation. I don't know if that can be, okay. So what I'm going to do is just summarize what we think are the most important issues we have we need to address. One is we need to cope with catastrophic events. Pakistan's geography puts us in a place where we are highly susceptible to catastrophic events, as we saw in the 22 floods. And these events, I'm afraid, are going to only increase as temperature begins to rise. So preparedness for that. And then how do you respond in a fiscally responsible fashion? What instruments can you design or can you further improve, like BISP, in order to intervene effectively when these catastrophic events happen? There's good analytical work in this area, and we hope very much that Valerie will speak to that when she speaks. The second important issue is adaptation to rising temperatures. There are three principal areas to focus on. One is the impact it'll have on cities. Sherry Rahman talked a lot about that. We know that flooding will increase. We know that heat islands will increase in cities. So what does analytical work tell us about how to deal with flooding and how to deal with heat islands? It'd be great if Valerie can speak to that issue. Energy is going to be central. We already know, as Sherry told us, that we are increasingly moving towards solarization, which is great. But we will need to complement solarization with fossil fuel-based generation, because solar generation is not constant. We have night, and we have rainy seasons, we have clouds. Therefore, it'll have to be backed up by the central grid. How well that central grid functions is going to remain extremely important. And that's a very mainstream issue. Just because we have now more solar energy, it doesn't mean that we can forget about the problems of our energy sector, which are huge, and these need to be addressed. And I'm sure Valerie will speak to that issue. Finally, importantly, we know that productivity will decline with rise in temperature. The World Bank has an excellent study, climate change study, which was done, I think, in 2019, which shows very clearly how productivity losses happen. And subsequently, another study on productivity that the World Bank did further deepens knowledge in that area. Productivity will decline in 50 degrees, 45 degrees temperature. You will not get the same output from workers. So the question is, how do we begin to address that? What kind of crop choices do we make to address the decline in productivity? This is going to be a very important issue, and I think analytical work in this area will be of a lot of help. Now, important, though not central to the climate change issue, but important related issue is the issue of the quality of air in cities. Again, Sherry Rahman spoke about it at length. All I'm going to say is that we know what the sources are of pollution in cities. We know the crop burning issue. We know the poor quality fuels. We know about industrial pollution in Lahore. And Lahore is cited as an example because it is the worst sufferer of poor quality air. A lot of that is under our control. We have the regulatory framework which we can enforce to control all of these things. Not all of it requires a lot of money. What is stopping us from addressing that issue? It's well within our control. It doesn't require financing. It'd be great if Valerie can dig up evidence from other countries where they've been able to address the question of the quality of air in cities without spending too much money, but just enforcing regulations effectively. Analytical work is important, but we have to find a different way of communicating that to the government. There's a lot of good analytical work out there. If you want to write a report, there's no dearth of background material you can get on Pakistan. How do you get its traction in the ministries across the road from here? How do you get its traction in the governments in the provinces? That's the big challenge. More analytical work won't help there. What will help is media. And the media, I think this is fantastic. What Dawn has done is brilliant. But this should not be the end of it. We have to engage in a persistent fashion to point out not only the misquoted numbers that Sherry was talking about, but also promises that are made, reports that get written, reports that are discussed in the presence of ministers, and the presence of chief ministers, in the presence of prime minister, and then nothing happens.